Okay, I think we should get going. So again, welcome to everybody. Great to have you with us on today's session, which is all about automating employee onboarding with Entra ID and Tikit. Our agenda for today, well, we can do some introductions very briefly. And then Jan's going to go through Entra employee onboarding life cycles and how that works. Some very interesting content. I'm going to cover a bit about Tikit requests and workflows. And then Jan's going to do a really cool demo at the end where we see it all come together to automate the process end to end. So some quick introductions. Jan, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, my name is Jan Vidar Elven. I'm a senior architect working at Evidi in Norway. I'm an MVP in Microsoft security, general security, but yeah. So I focus a lot on security, identity access management, governance, lifecycle, and so on, and keep myself busy. And yeah, looking forward to this webinar.
Great, thank you. And I'm Jeff Ross. I'm part of the customer success team for Tikit by Saracen. And yeah, also great to be here. And I also keep myself busy away from Tikit. I'm one of the co-founders of Experts Live UK, which is a Microsoft user group community in the UK. And speaking of Experts Live and Microsoft communities, Jan Vidar and myself will both be at Experts Live EU next week in Budapest.
Yeah.
So if anyone here is going, then yeah, come find us, come say hi, come introduce yourself. We'd love to meet you, talk more about any of these topics or anything else. And so yeah, please do introduce yourself. Okay, over to you, Jan.
Yeah, let's take control. So I'm going to talk about Entra ID governance and how we can do effective identity and access management and using identity governance and administration with the support of Microsoft Entra. And today we are also going to look into how we can have exciting integrations with different solutions and tools like Tikit by Saracen. So let's get started with that. So first I want to bring you on a little journey. As you know, if you are employed at an organization, that usually starts with a recruitment process or some kind of initiative that might hand you an employment contract or a statement of work or something that facilitates your onboarding to the organization. That's an employment contract that could be containing information about who you are, where you live, what your address, personnel information. It could be about what you are going to do at work, what kind of role and department, and who your manager is going to be, and so on, and other details. And you sign that, and you are, in fact, started your onboarding journey to the organization. So in that respect, you also probably get registered somewhere in a system of record. Many organizations use an HR system for that. And that could be a database. It could be a quite an advanced solution. It could also be some simpler data sources, depending on the size of the organization and how you do stuff. But that's often the process behind it. We are more and more seeing also exciting integrations in that first supporting phase, like using verifiable credentials with the support of Entra Verify ID, for example. You can bring your own digital credentials and you can use that in the sign-in process. And all that happens before you actually are given a work account at the organization. So when you have end up in the system of record, the HR system, for example, we are looking at the next phase, and that is bringing your account into Entra. And as most listeners might be aware, Entra ID is now the new Azure AD, Azure Active Directory. So I will refer it to at Entra ID, as of course, because that's the main topic of today. So we have something called Entra ID inbound provisioning. It has been released for a little while now. This is an endpoint where you can provide users into Entra ID via an API. In this inbound provisioning case, you can create users, you can read existing users, you can update, you can disable or delete users, and so on. So this really facilitates something you can use to bring people from a specific source, for example, a system of record or HR system. But you can also use this same endpoint as ad hoc scenarios or your own custom integrations. So when you bring users into Entra, then you can do something with the users inside the organization. And this is where the Entra ID governance come in play, because, for example, you can manage task and access scenarios. You can let people automatically added to groups and roles. You can have send them email. You can provide some security methods. You can do a lot of exciting things that prepares the user for starting in the organization. And one thing that's important to note is that often in an HR system, you have a start date. When people leave your organization, they also might have an end date, of course. And all this can be mapped to the respective attributes in Entra called employee start date or employee leave date time. So you can have a synchronization of that start and end dates. And this enables you to do lifecycle of the users in Entra via the Entra ID governance. So let's talk about identity and access lifecycle. So usually at employment time, it will be a certain time before you actually start. And then we can have this timeline. And let's say that T minus 30, it's a time 30 days before you start, for example. But in the first employment phase, as we talked about on the last slide, you are getting registered in HR. We are doing some inbound provisioning to Entra ID, and then we can start looking at what kind of task do we need to complete in Entra before the user starts. So, for example, 30 days before, you might be added to a ERP system or some software as a service solutions that your organizations has integrated. This can be for preparing your user to be able to have a salary. Maybe you go into an invoicing system or so on. So you have some resource things going on at a certain time before you start. And then we can jump forward, maybe 7 days before you start. Your user is added with licenses. That means that your user will have a mailbox, calendar, you are added to certain groups and teams, and this enables maybe your coming manager to start booking you to meetings, prepare your onboarding when you start, and so on. And then we come to the actual first day of work. And in this case, many organizations, they enable the user. So this is when you're first doing the logon. You bootstrap your security methods. That means that you can set up your mobile phone or your device with Windows Hello for Business, for example. You can set up authenticator or multi-factor authentication. You join your device, the organization. You start on learning management systems for helping you with your first few days at work, and so on. So this is very typical in many organizations, but this is the actual day of where you start. And we can continue looking at this life cycle because after a certain days in the organization, you can have some follow-ups or automatic more courses in the learning management system or any other things that are part of your onboarding process. Sometimes in organizations and more often than sometimes even, your role can change. maybe you switch department, you are promoted, you have different responsibilities, and this is scenarios where you typically need access to more applications, other applications, you need to be put into other teams or groups, and so on. So this is a scenario that we often see during the course of your life cycle. And this is not just a fixed timeline. It could be dependent on your title. It could be dependent on other attributes as well. And for many users, they come to a point where they leave the organization, so your user needs to be terminated, and then often we need to do some tasks as well, like disabling the user, removing access from applications to groups and teams, and so on. So this is a typical life cycle, and we have a lot of tasks, and now we have tools that can help us with these tasks. So this is where Entra ID governance comes into the solution. We have a range of different products and solutions we can use now in Entra, and I have summarized some of the maybe most important features in identity governance. First of all, we have a service catalog. By using entitlement management, we can create something called access packages, and access packages can be something that you can request as a self-service. It can have approvals. It can also be automatically assigned. So depending on your role or your attributes, you can automatically have some access packages assigned to you. But in most cases, it will be something that you request. So this is something you go to an access portal and you request the access to different kinds of services. And typically this has been teams, applications, groups, but now you can also in preview request access to Entra ID roles. Like, for example, if you need to be a global admin, you should never be have to be that, but in any case, you can ask for example, be an authentication admin or application admin or something. So you can also integrate that in the service catalog. The service catalog can also be integrated with something called custom extensions, and custom extensions are Azure Logic Apps, and that can be used for automating and integrating with the other solutions and creating some interesting scenarios. Other parts of the identity governance is the privileged access using Entra ID privileged identity management. So you can have eligible and role assignments to Entra ID roles and groups and Azure resources. And we have access governance where you can regularly do access reviews. You can use terms of use as a conditional access policy, so that when you log on, either as an external user, we see more and more of that. When you are added as a guest to an organization, you are presented with a terms of use, and you have to accept it before you are allowed to access. But more and more organizations are using terms of use internally now as well. You can connect it to these specific applications or a more general one. So this is access governance, and then this lets the identity admin keep everything in check and in control, that people actually have access to what they need and should, but not necessarily stacking up permissions and access over time, which often happen in organizations, right? You are added to groups, but you're never removed from them. So, and the last part, and the most interesting part regarding today's scenario, and also some of the things that I do a lot of work on these days, these are the lifecycle workflows which we have in Entra ID governance. So we have support for joiner, mover, and leaver scenarios. And joiner is obviously when you are joined to the organization, when you are a new user. And we have leaver when you terminated and leave the organization, and mover is a job role change. And if you remember the timeline I had earlier, these scenarios supports that different events at the timeline. And lifecycle workers can also do custom extensions, logic apps that can do integrations and do more automation. So that's identity governance in Entra in an overview. And each of these solutions can be talked about in an hour or so. So we are not going to be able to really go deep dive in every one of them. I want to focus now a little bit on the Entra ID inbound provisioning API. And as if you remember from the first slide I have, we saw that after the user was added to some system of record, we can get that information from that system of record and push that into the Entra provisioning service. And the Entra ID provisioning API supports both cloud-only users and also hybrid users. So depending on the scenario, if you have a local Active Directory and you synchronize accounts with Entra Connect Sync, you can create the users in a local organization unit via the Entra provisioning service, which allows that via an agent installation in your environment. If you only are doing Entra ID cloud users, or maybe a combination, you can also write users directly to Entra ID. So this is the main feature set here, is that we have this provisioning endpoint, and we can do any system of record and any automation tool to push those identity changes. And those pushes are based on a graph endpoint, Microsoft Graph endpoint, and you need to provide a so-called payload in form of a protocol called SCIM and JSON files. So it's a specific schema, and you need to provide those changes to that provisioning endpoint. But this opens up a lot of interesting scenarios, because one thing is that if you are using an HR system, you can build some automatic tool that automatically syncs users from your HR system and over to Entra. And you can also update them as the properties change for the users in the HR system. But you can also think about this as a scenario where you can use the same endpoint to do custom integrations. For example, in some cases you need a user for a contractor, or maybe you need to create an admin user, for example, or you need to do some specific ad hoc user creations. You can use that same endpoint to create those users. Okay, so that's the Entra scenario. Inbound provisioning, and then we have the lifecycle scenarios. And as we specified, joiner is new to the organization, mover is somebody that changed their role, and leaver is somebody that leaves the organization and quits. So these are the specific scenarios. And inside lifecycle workflows in Entra ID governance, we now have templates that support those different types of scenarios. So the text there is a little bit small, but we can see that we have joiner, we have mover, we have leaver scenarios, and some of them are manual and some are automated. And the automated ones are based on triggers. So for example, if I set an employee start date for a user to be a certain date in forward in time, I can do a joiner scenario where I look at the start date and I trigger that, for example, on day 0 or 30 days before or 7 days before, and so on. So in that respect, you can build for workflows that will automatically trigger as you specify. So you can have rules on that. You can also do ad hoc workflows that you trigger as an identity admin when you need to. And these workflows are also in Microsoft Graph, so you can even trigger them via a Graph API if you are really looking into specific scenarios. The same with mover. When you change a role, you can have a trigger based on if you are taken out of a group or into another group. You can have that as a trigger. You can also have a trigger on attribute change. For example, if your department attribute change from one department to another, you can have a trigger on that and run a mover scenario automatically. And the same with leaver. The leaver scenarios, trigger-based, are based on the employee leave day time, attribute, and then, for example, you can automatically make sure that the user are disabled, for example, on day 0 of the leave date, and maybe you do a delete operation after 14 days or 30 days, for example. So these are the lifecycle workflows we have in Entra. So looking into what we can do today, let's say that we want to integrate Tikit with Entra ID provisioning. We can do that because if we place Tikit in any system of record or any automation tool, we can let users, for example, do a request for a user. We can submit a form and we can push those identity changes to the Entra provisioning service, and we will get a user created via standardized process. This is kind of a replacement scenario where I think many people are doing this today, where they don't really have a good governance or lifecycle control. They will just ask an identity admin or help desk, can you create a user for me? The user's name is this and this, and it needs to be able to have these attributes and so on. And you're doing it in a conversation style instead of a formalized process. So this is the topic for the demo. But Jeff, should we talk about what Tikit is first?
Yes, let's do that. So for those of you that don't know, I'm very excited to introduce Tikit. Tikit is a Microsoft cloud-aligned service desk tool, service management, help desk, whatever we call that process, where people are requesting information, requesting help, requesting things, and we just see it through to fulfillment. The most common kind of deployment of that concept is IT service management. ITSM, a well kind of known and well used practice. But what's great about Tikit is it can run service management for any of your support functions in your organization. And it's not just IT that need to use these kind of tools to help manage work. Lots of other departments have that same challenge of IT, where people are asking for information, raising requests, they need things done, they need things changed, and that department needs to track that work, track who's doing it, track when it was asked and when it was done, and all the kind of details of that. So we see that in HR departments a lot these days. They want a tool to track their work. We see it in facilities team. We're being asked to, set up offices and move equipment and fix issues with faulty locks and all these sort of things. It's the same problem that IT have been having. So it's the same solution, a tool like Tikit that can manage that work. Tikit works across Microsoft 365 ecosystem and all Microsoft Cloud products. You can see in my slide here all the different areas of Microsoft technology that it can interface with and touch. Really, Tikit just sits in the middle and can kind of push and pull data from one to the other, link these pieces together to give you these kind of seamless automated processes. And Tikit also works where your users are. So again, we see on my slide that there's different ways that your employees can choose to work. Tikit lives in Teams. It's a Teams first concept, and we're going to do a little demo of that in a second. But you can also interface via email, directly through a web portal, and in mobile as well. And my final section here on the slide is around the ITIL framework. If you use ITIL, if you love ITIL, like I do, never met anyone else who loves ITIL as much as I do, but someone else out there must. But yeah, if you're doing ITIL and that's important to you, then Tikit can align with that into these kind of distinct concepts and processes. Likewise, if you don't like ITIL and you just want to kind of flatten out things, Tikit works out for you as well. The important thing is Tikit tries to, and I think does a great job of abstracting all that from your end user, because even if you love ITIL, if you care about ITIL is very important to your organization. I can guarantee you that your end users don't care about it. They just want their issue fixed. They just want their information. So we're trying to find that balance where we're doing ITIL internally, but not pushing all that baggage, all that extra hassle onto our end users. They can just get what they need and get it as quick as possible. And that's what Tikit does very well. And I've got a very quick demo of some of these concepts just to show you guys. So hopefully you've seen my demo screen here. So here we are in Teams. As I said, the users can work in Teams. That's where my demo is today. And you can see from the screenshot, we're talking with the virtual agent. That's a bot you can deploy to your end users to interface with Tikit. And we've got the help card showing there, and you can see all the different things that a user can interact with. They get this kind of visual card. This is an adaptive card in Teams. And you can kind of see the sorts of things that they can do across different departments as well. And they can choose to click on these buttons and to request the information or to kick off these processes around these different things, or they can just log a ticket with these users. But Tikit is a conversational application. Teams is a conversational concept. So we just saw there, the end user actually can type something to the bot, when are the company holidays, and get back that answer. And Tikit is using cognitive services, natural language processing, to make a match. It doesn't need the exact phrasing, the exact keywords. It'll match on the meaning of that question and provide you that answer that I've told Tikit to respond with when that question is asked around holidays. And we see we've got the option there. Was this answer helpful? If we're choosing yes, then we're actually logging that and tracking that as a deflected request. We can use that to see, the success of our knowledge, the happiness of our customers with the service, and how much time is being saved by deflecting tickets with the AI to these automated responses. If we're choosing no, the user can proceed to log a normal ticket as usual that needs to go to someone to get them the help they need. In the second scenario, I'm going to ask a different question, and this one I've not predefined the answer within Tikit. It's very hard to build all the answers to all the questions you might ever get asked. But we have that information somewhere. We have lots of, in all organizations, we have lots of documents, lots of guides, lots of knowledge. So Tikit can interface with an Azure OpenAI instance where you can upload your PDFs, your Word documents, your PowerPoint slides, and when a question is asked that can't find an answer for what you provided, it can fall back and use generative AI to create an answer for you for that question using all the documentation that it's been provided. That stays within your tenant, in your Azure tenant. We don't want your data. We don't need your data. It stays with you, and it just interfaces into Tikit. And you can see that, as we know, generative AI is great, but we don't know exactly what it's going to do. So we do provide the citations, the links to the actual documents where the answer can be found, so you can go and check it out for yourself. And again, we get was the answer helpful, yes, no. And it's going too quick for me. In the third scenario here, we're asking a different type of question. Now we're asking to request something. Can I post about a new job? And this time we're making a match again, but it's to a business process, the new job posting process. And this time we're presented with a form to fill in to capture all the information as part of that process. We fill that in as the end user and submit that off. And because we've matched on that process, we've made that that match based on the meaning of my question. We now know what we need to do with that. We know which department that needs to go to. It's going to go to HR, probably in this case, to the recruitment team of HR. We know that what all the properties of the ticket, what type of ticket it is. We know that what the SLA is going to be around that particular request, how long that normally takes. And we can kick off into what we call a life cycle. Now, a life cycle in Tikit is a multi-phase business process with each phase containing tasks, approvals, and automations as needed. So that allows you to really control the flow of this ticket through different phases where different people interact with it, even different departments can all interact with one ticket as it goes through the various steps it needs to in order to be fulfilled. And Tikit life cycles allow you to control that flow and also insert automation pieces using Power Automate. So at certain points of that ticket's life cycle, we can call out to a Power Automate flow and automate some of our work for us. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Jan.
Great. So then I can click here, I think, and now this was your video. 2 sec. There we are.
There we go.
There we go. That's the correct one. So I also prepared some a demo scenario here. So this is in my environment. I'm talking with Tikit virtual agent, and I'm requesting to onboard a new user. And I will be presented by a form. This form is designed by me. It's an adaptive card, so you can do some optimizations. You can present the fields as you want. You can basically do some default values if you want to do that, and so on. I haven't done too much of that here, but I just specify different kind of attributes for the user, including the username, the personal information, contact information for mobile phone, job title, what kind of company, if this is a multi-company organization. I can have an employee type, who's the manager, and the office locations, and so on. As you can see there, I also have an employee start date and start time, which coincidentally is today, but it could be probably a certain time in the future. So when I've filled in the relevant fields, I will submit that. And depending on how I built that lifecycle, I can now will be presented with an approval. So in this case, I'm requesting a new user, but I'm also the approver. So it's a little bit of double communication here, but this is just a demo environment. But basically, I will have a confirmation that my ticket has been created as an end user, and the actual manager that needs to approve this will do the approve. As you can see, I did there. So when the approval is done, I will trigger a Power Automate flow. And this is where, if you remember the part where I do the information gathering and present that data to the Entra ID provisioning service. So this is a trigger that will do a specific trigger on a Power Automate task becoming active. I will get the ticket. This is actions and triggers I have directly supported into Power Automate when I have a ticket available. And then I could get that answer from that adaptive card, and you can see the fields, and then I will construct a payload based on the SCIM protocol that the Entra ID provisioning service requires. And then I could put that into the provisioning endpoint. And this, in fact, means that when I go to Entra ID now, I can find that user. And in this case, I've just filtered on all creations. And you can see that the user I created actually was created. And I have rich logs on what kind of operation, how did it go, if there were any errors. Then I will probably have some troubleshooting and recommendation tips, but everything looks okay here. So this is how Entra receives the user, because I pushed it in via Power Automate flow via Tikit. And now the user is provisioned and created, and I can also see which kind of properties that were mapped via the inbound provisioning service. So now I have a specific way that I could request the user, and I could also do update to users and so on. So you can see that when I change my filter from the provisioning logs, I can see that I have actually created this user before. So now it was just an update because I have had another start date, for example. So this is the Entra ID provisioning part. This is an enterprise application which you integrate with your Entra tenant. You have a graph endpoint, as I just showing now on the screen, and this is the endpoint I need to push those changes to. Other parts we talked about is the lifecycle workflows, but because now that I have a user I actually created, I can go and find my different scenarios. For example, T-0, I have onboard users with temporary access pass and SMS. So I will actually create a temporary access pass based on the employee hire date, on this 0 day of the start. I can also do scopes, and I can see which users are in scope. So, for example, in this case, I have some tasks that enable the user account, I send a Ventcom email, and I run a so-called custom task. And the custom task is where I select which kind of logic app that will do the magic on behalf of the user. So that specific logic app is a logic app I've created that takes the input, which user is this regarding, and I will create an authentication method in Microsoft Graph that actually will create that temporary access pass, and then I will send out an SMS text message to the user's mobile phone so that the users can have that first time access pass when they start logging on their devices on the first day of work. So in this case, I'm using a managed identity from the logic app to do the work against Microsoft Graph and automate that process. Moving along, I have access packages, and these are the things that we can request access to. So usually people have a myaccess.microsoft.com portal. So if you set up access packages, users will go to that myaccess portal and request that themselves. But as you will see in the coming up demo, I will integrate that also with Tikit. So in this case, I am moving the approver step to the identity admin. So in access package, I can have an approver there. And I can ask for some specific attributes like how long should the temporary access pass last, for example, many hours, should it be reused, and so on. If you're familiar with temporary access passes, you know that you need to make sure that they either can be reused or only one-time use, or that they have a specific duration. So in this case, I'm running quite a similar logic app. It's a different logic app than the one I showed before. But in this case, I'm also receiving the user information, create a temporary access pass authentication method, and send those details out to the users so they can use it. So in the next demo, I will show a little bit more detail how this actually was set up in Tikit. So I have started with in Tikit in the administration settings, I have the possibility to define life cycles. And when I create a life cycle, I can add in Power Automate tasks if I want to do that. I can also add approval. In this case, I have the approver in the Entra part. I have it on the access package in Entra, so I don't add a approver here. So I create a Power Automate task. And next, I will go into the templates. So the life cycle is actually where I define what kind of task I want to do. For example, the integrations with Power Automate, and then I go to the templates, and the templates is actually where I will link in what kind of ticket this will create. So this is a template, and I will for a change request, and I have here selected lifecycle, and I selected the previously created lifecycle. So now I can add a form to this. I can have a predefined form. There are some samples there, but I can create my own, and this is also an adaptive card. So you can do some simple design inside the Tikit administration, but you can also go to Adaptive Cards IO Designer, and you can create your card, and you can paste that in, and then you have a form where you can request information from the user. If I wanted the Tikit virtual agent to respond to my questions, I need to add knowledge, and knowledge is where I add the phrases. For example, I need a new tab, I need a new temporary access pass, give me a tab, send me a temporary access pass, or something, all the different combinations. And in this case, I registered that, and now I can also link that to the template and the lifecycle. So next part, I will go into Power Automate, and I will create a trigger based on that specific tap authentication method lifecycle, and the deployment phase is triggered, and I will get the ticket details. And when I get make sure that I get the request information, and I also can parse the card answer that I specified. In this case, I do a Microsoft Graph package assignment request. So instead of the users going to the My Access portal and accessing the package themselves, they can let Tikit do it for them. So in this case, when the user types in the information to get access to an access package, they can ask for that in Tikit, and Tikit will do the work for them. And in this case, I have a policy here where I take care of the information. I have questions for the duration of the temporary access pass, and how, if it should be reused or not. And I have a custom extension integrated with that. So in this case, the Logic app will connect to a key vault and get some credentials to be able to talk to the SMS API. It will create a graph tap authentication method, and it will submit that method details to the user via SMS. So in this scenario, the user will be able to go into to the Tikit virtual agent and ask for a temporary access pass, and it will be provisioned. So in this case, I think I just will dare to do something exciting, Geoff, and do a live demo at the end.
Yes.
Because now we have provided the groundwork. So let's see if we can actually make this in a live demo. So let me see if I can just find the right window here to see. So can you see my Tikit virtual agent now?
Yeah, we see it.
Perfect. And I wanted to say, for example, I need a new temporary access pass, which is the scenario I created now, right? And it will do some little bit of thinking. And here I am presented with my adaptive card. So if I want to have it, the possibility to reuse it, it could make sense to have reused the tap several times if you are onboarding different devices. And also what kind of duration. I only need it for 2 hours, for example. And then I will submit that. And in this case, I don't have an approval step in Tikit, because it will just start up that process, and we have the approval step on the Entra side instead. So now let me see if I'm getting something on my phone after a while. So now in this case, I can go and look at the status of my request and so on. But what's really happened now is that I have triggered the Power Automate flow, which I defined. And here we are, request a new tab. Should be recently triggered now. $34 seconds ago, and succeeded, right? Nice. So it seems okay. So in this case, that ticket was yeah, this is the I need a temporary access pass and so on. So this is what I typed. And I'm doing some graph authentication, and I send in a graph request that would make sure that I'm asking for a package assignment to Microsoft Graph. So this is very graph specific, but if you are known with graph, you can do these kinds of automations. So I send this graph request, and also it was successful. That means that I now will be added to that access package, and that will trigger the custom extension eventually. So So in a few minutes or so, I will actually get that text message back. There are some minutes in that will take time on the access package processing, because the access package need to be delivered, and I see it hasn't done that yet, because then I will receive the SMS text message. So I think we can probably wait a little bit on that and do questions while we're doing that, Jeff.
Yeah, let's do that.
Because this is the last part, so I'm basically. If you go and take over and do the closing slide, and I will just show you guys on the camera if I receive the text message. So yeah.
All right, we'll await that. Very cool. Thank you. Thanks for that demo. Should be bringing this back up. So yeah, I did actually forget to say at the start, if we have any questions, that there's a Q&A panel. So hopefully you found it. And we'll have a look at some questions in a second. Do you see my slide, Jan? Is it coming up?
No, I'm seeing I'm seeing the slide, but not the end slide. I'm seeing the next to last slide, the one that I stopped with the video.
Okay, here we go. Okay, yeah. So just to wrap up, whilst we're waiting for that SMS to come through, I just wanted to again thank everyone for joining us today. Great to have you on the session. And yes, if you have any, if you wanted to follow up with any of us, with myself, with Jan, then there's the best place just to contact team at Tikit.ai, the email address on the screen there, and then they can pass you on, based on what the question is, to the right team, or put you in touch with Jan Vidar if that's what you're asking. If you have any more questions after the session, you think of it, then please just get in touch. We would love to hear from you. Okay, let's have a look. There's a couple of questions here. So I'll go ahead and take the first one myself, about a bit more information about Tikit and how they can see more about it. So if you go to Tikit.ai is our website. There's lots of videos there and help, information, knowledge articles, and so on about seeing more about what Tikit can do and understanding it. And you can, from that page, click to actually install it straight into your Microsoft 365 tenant and start a 14-day free trial where you can evaluate it, full feature trial, no credit card needed, just to have a play. So again, have a look at that. If you want to hear any more about that, have any questions, then please reach out. Any SMS yet, Jan?
No, I'm just checking Entra. The request for the access package is in submit status, so it will be delivered soon, and then the SMS will arrive. But you just have to trust me on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me just ask you this question here that's been asked about licensing for some of the stuff you showed today. What level of Entra licensing is needed?
Yeah, so the Entra ID provisioning service, let's start with that. You can actually start with that in if you have Entra ID P1 or EMSE3 or similar, or P2, of course. So you can start with that. There are a few limitations. You can only have a few of those Entra ID provisioning services. So basically, you can have several if you have a test and development environment and some production and maybe different integrations. You can have possibility to have separate Entra ID provisioning services in the organization, but with the Entra ID basic licensing, you can only have one or two. I don't remember the details actually. And also there's a limitation on the number of objects, but that's in the hundreds of thousands or something. So you can start with Entra ID provisioning right away. Regarding the lifecycle workflows and the access packages and that stuff, that requires an Entra ID governance license. And the Entra ID governance license is an addition to Entra ID P1 or P2. It's a step-up license if you already have that, but you can also have it separately licensed if you just have Entra ID free. So you can have Entra ID free, and then you can have an Entra ID governance license add-on. And now over the summer, we also got something called the Entra Suite, which is a suite of products that not only contains the Entra ID governance, but also the new solutions for secure global access and so on. So that's a bigger part of more products in Entra. So so it depends on the scenario. Most organizations, I think, are in a scenario where they already have E3 or E5 or P1 or P2 of Entra, and then they can look at using Entra ID governance for just a step-up license, which is an add-on to existing Entra to be able to use those lifecycle workflows and so on.
Great, thank you. And yeah, a second question just got asked on that same exact concept. So hopefully we've answered both questions in one there.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Okay, well, unless any last minute questions or any last minute SMS to come through, then I'll say again, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to you, Jan Vidar. And I'll see you next week in Budapest. And I hope to see some of our audience there as well.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.